Hey guys, it's Mark and Taha again. We saw how much reception we got for our last video on Bland AI's conversational pathways, so we decided to run it back with a couple more videos. And today's video is about how to create and label pathways in Bland AI. So once again, I'm going to be more of the noob in this video, and Taha, like he is in real life, is going to be the expert here and the guru. So I'm going to lean on him to kind of walk us through how to label pathways in Bland AI and what it really takes to do that.
Sure. Well, thank you, Mark, for having me back on. It's always a pleasure. The Before we actually jumped on this video, I had a conversation the other day with one of the owners of Bland to try to gather as much information as I could about this topic, just to make sure that I wasn't in the wrong on any of these things. I learned a lot from that conversation, and I'll try to pass that knowledge on to everyone here as we move along through these points. Kind of different format than last time, where this will be a bit more structured. I've condensed all of my learnings into a couple different documents that I'll run through, and then when appropriate, I'll jump into Bland, show you this in real life or in action, and then we'll just sort of jump back and forth as appropriate.
Cool, awesome. And this time we tried to level up the production for you guys because last time I think it was a Google Meet and things were a bit unclear. So we tried to use something a bit more sophisticated this time. Yeah.
Yeah. I apologize for the horrible quality, and I'll zoom in a lot more this
Okay, there
time.
we go. We're taking your feedback. So, and even with this tutorial and the ones coming up, please keep giving us feedback. That's what helps us deliver better and better content. So, without further ado, Taha, you want to take it away?
Let's do it. All right. How to use pathway labels in Bland AI. By the way, for those who are unaware, what I mean by pathway labels is that within the actual Bland platform for conversational pathways, you have all of these cards, which are called nodes. Now, each specific node is sort of like a mini prompt on its own. And the pathway label, or the pathway in general, is what connects each node together. So here we have two different cards. And for context, this assistant is for a home buying company where they buy people who opted in to be called to discuss potentially selling their home. Now, between each card, we need a really good connection point to tell the agent, hey, look, go from A card to B card. That's where the pathways come in. And this little blue icon right here, or this little blue bubble, is what tells Bland when it should take each pathway. So this one, for example, is, hey, look, if the person that we're calling is the correct person, or this is an inbound call and we're returning the call. I'll touch on that inbound returning in a little bit because it's more of a workaround to a different issue. But basically, what this is saying is that when we're calling these people, we first need to make sure that we're calling the right person. And we're telling Bland that, look, when you're reaching out to them, you take this pathway when the user, and I'll zoom in here, you choose this path when the user confirms that they are who we're trying to call. If the user asks who this is, or this is the question, assume that they are the intended recipient. In the sense that if you say, hey, is this Emily? They're like, what's up? You can assume that that is the intended recipient, because somebody who isn't Emily wouldn't, that's not really the most natural way to answer that question if you aren't the person they're looking for, right? It'd be something along the lines of, oh, who is this? How can I help you? Something like that.
So,
Even how can I help you wouldn't fall
so
into it.
how does
Go
this
ahead,
really
Mark.
execute behind the scenes? Because you have the first one, really shortly introduce yourself, and then you have this label. Is it like a chain
Sure.
prompt or a system prompt? Like, how does it work?
Sure. So basically, the label, the best way to view it, from my understanding, is a form of a condition. And we can touch on this later as well. But you're basically saying that, look, on the back end, it's more of a, it's, how would I say it? It's a big prompt. And then every label is sort of a sub prompt underneath it. And you're telling it, hey, look, if this falls within prompt A, would be this, then take this pathway and then go to the next prompt. That's kind of how it works in the back end, to my understanding. Now, obviously, I do not work on the back end
Right.
of Bland, but in practice, that's the best way that I've thought of seeing
Gotcha.
it. Now, keep in mind, the biggest thing to understand when using Bland pathways, and I've got a whole section dedicated just to this portion, is Bland will try to move forward always. If it meets the condition, it will always try to move the conversation forward, which means it will try, or it is biased towards actually going to the next node if the condition of the current node has been
Got
fulfilled.
it.
Something to keep
Okay.
in mind. And I mean, so going back to this initial pathway, it says persons who are trying to call and or they're returning the call. Now, that's sort of the standard pathway. The other one in this case is that what if this person isn't the person we're trying to call, right? Isn't who we're trying to call. Same thing here. Basically, we're just telling Blend, hey, look, I want you to go down this route if the caller isn't who we say we're trying to reach. Now, the reason why we're doing this is because there's a variable in here that says you are calling name. Now, this variable is calling from an opt-in, right? Somebody signed up to some sort of form. They came in. We're calling this person with name, address, and the current time. First thing we're doing is, hey, look, is this name? And then if they say, oh yeah, this is, continue the conversation, on this path. And then if they say that's not me, or who are you, or what do you want, anything like that, go down this other path, which basically just takes them to a end node. Apologize for bothering them and wish them a good day. That's the basic overview of labels in
Can you
general.
can you have
Now,
more than one
sure,
label on the same line, or is it one label per line?
one label per line. What do you mean?
Like you see here, you have user not interested. If you zoom in again on the top there,
Right
yeah.
here.
So user not is not interested at selling at the moment. Um,
Sure.
is that the only label that you can throw on that line? Like I can't put another one like a if else, like if they are interested, do
Yeah,
this. Otherwise, say
sure.
this kind of thing.
Sure. So you can. There's sort of two ways. You can have how do you say, groups of label, I guess would be the right word, right? Because if we click
Yeah.
on this one, right, it says the first one is kind of the main label, which is user is not interested in something at the moment. So kind of a generic prompt for it. But you can also give more details. If we go here, you see here where it says description. Um, there we go. It says description. Choose when or basically give more context as to when this agent should choose this pathway. And this is where you would kind of put groups of labels together. So, for example, here you have user is not interested in something at the moment. You could also put or. Here you see right here where it says choose a pathway when the user clearly isn't thinking or interested in selling at the moment. If you have multiple different sub labels that all fall within the same category, in the sense that if you want them to go down the same path, you can have multiple labels or multiple conditions that would make it go down that
Got
path.
it. Okay.
So you can use and, you can use or. Now,
Yeah,
make
it makes
sense?
sense. Perfect. Thanks.
Amazing. So I'll go back into my little document here. And the way I understand these, the way I look at these labels, is sort of like railguards, right? As guiding tools to where the conversation should go based on different conditions. Now, when using labels, it's really I've found, or I've also been told, that it's better to give super um, clear labels. Something like this: user provided partial address over something like user has given their street name and number, but not the city or postal code. The problem that can occur with this, right? I know with all these LLMs, there is some margin of error. So you want to give it the least amount of opportunities to do so. So what's going to happen is, or one thought to have is, what happens if the user gives their street name, the number, the city, but not the postal code? Well, now this condition or this label only has both, but not the city or postal code.
Right.
But what if it's missing one? You don't want to make it like incomplete.
Mm.
So just give it, look, if there's anything missing from this address, go down this route, which would usually be um, ask the user for more information.
Okay. So the
And I got a couple more of
rule of
these examples
thumb
as well.
is short to the point and ideally one condition per statement or label.
One condition, actually, no, I found a lot of success with multiple conditions, in the sense that if you have a group of labels that go down the same path, you can all put them in one. You don't have to have multiple labels that go down to the same node for different what's it called, for different let's say you do user is not thinking of selling, right? Or user has moved out of the
Right.
house. Both of those are not worth the lead. Like, they're not worth pursuing. So you would just put, in that case, you would put user is not interested in selling and slash or user doesn't live there anymore. You could put that under the same label.
Okay. Understood.
And then, so that's sort of part one. Here's a probably the most important part of this video, the conditions. In Bland, the label will not be considered, and this has been confirmed by the Bland team. Labels are not taken into consideration until the conditions are met.
Mm.
What that means is that the conditions are actually a lot more, not useful, but a lot more important than the labels. Because once the condition is met, so let's say you're trying to gather user information, you're trying to gather whether, how do I say this? The condition by far has been the most useful thing that I've used in Blind in a long time, in the sense that it gives you so much more control over how the conversation goes. Because the problem that would happen before, right? And now this is a really good, this card right here kind of illustrates the point where in here it says there's a condition that says user has given a date and time that they can meet on. Now, the reason why this is so powerful is that otherwise, if the user, if I didn't put date and time, sometimes people would say, oh yeah, as soon as possible. and then that would sort of that would trigger the next node, which would be a problem because we cannot book an appointment on as soon as possible. But I can do one with, oh yeah, can we do tomorrow at 10? This condition doesn't allow for that. They have to give a concrete date and time before it moves on.
Mm.
So, and I've been told, and obviously this is not probably not the greatest example, but you should probably use conditions in every single node when possible, because that will force the agent to stay on this node until they have acquired this information. Whether you're looking for an email, you're looking for an address, you're looking for a credit score, anything. If you need some information in order to continue the conversation, use conditions more than labels, because bland has a bias to move the conversation forward until the condition is met. Which means that even if you have two labels that says, even if you have two labels, one that says user has provided email address and user hasn't provided email address, or user has done something else. If there is no condition telling it that, look, you need to use an email address, it will try to move the conversation forward anyway, which breaks the agent. So always, 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 when it's required and when it's important, use
Got
conditions.
it. So the TLDR is if you use conditions, then you have more of a deterministic experience because you can anticipate what's going to happen and predict behavior better. Whereas if you just rely and lean on labels, it's more stochastic in the sense that there could be some randomness there that you can't really account for, right? Yeah,
Yeah, 100%,
got it.
100%. I've been told over and over and over again, but the blind guys use the conditions profusely, or like don't shy away from using
Profusely.
conditions.
Okay. All right.
um. Oh yeah. Well, there we go. Speaking of the devil, bland will have a bias to move forward always, and it can be quite annoying. I didn't realize what it was initially because you would see the card, like you see the card light up, but if there's no condition or if the condition's met, bland it'll try to move
Mm.
forward. In theory it shouldn't, but in practice it just does. And by the way, I won't necessarily go over every single word that's been written here. I'm sure we can make this available, Mark, for people if they want to
Yeah.
read, or feel free to
Yeah.
pause.
So we're going to share this Google Doc in the description so you can kind of follow along at your own pace. And we're just going to kind of skim through it and focus more on what it looks like in Bland.
Sure. And then labels to handle different user intents. I love this part. So the best way that I've found to use labels, right, is you have some sort of condition, right? In this case, you would be asking about the experience with the recently purchased product. So you said, hey, look, what do you think about this product? And then if I jump into bland real quick, uh, there we go. If I jump into bland, this is my favorite way of using labels. Now, this can be quite messy because there's a lot of labels, but you'll start to see the power of it.
Yeah.
This is for a home buying company, right? And we're basically asking the user, after making sure that we're talking to the right person, we're basically asking them, hey, look, we know we spoke to you guys a bit earlier. We were just wondering, are you guys still looking to sell? Now, there's a bunch of different ways that this conversation can go. It can go, I'll zoom in here a little bit. It can go, the user wants to move forward, right? In which case that we propose a live transfer to an actual live agent so that they can book an appointment. And it can go, let me see here. All right. The users think about it. So most people, they'll be like, well, maybe we're still thinking about it. We're still determining if this is something we really want to do. What's the market like? Something like that. We can also something a lot more, maybe a bit more neutral. And then you can also have I don't know why there's two of them here. I think they go to the same place. There we go. Yeah. So actually, this one should be deleted. And then you have user not interested in selling at the moment, meaning they're fully closed off. Keep in mind, a lot of the stuff is used to call back old leads. And in this case, you basically have three. Look, person said, we're talking to the right person. Now we just want to know what their feelings are on actually currently selling their house. And the three different options are the three different labels: not interested, still thinking about it, and wants to move forward. Pretty straightforward, right? That's the best way. This is how labels are meant to be used.
What?
Condition has been
Yeah.
achieved. Yeah,
What
go ahead.
happens in the case that I say, it's not a good time to talk. I still need to think about it. So I've kind of satisfied both conditions.
Sure. The best answer for that actually I think is actually on the next
Okay.
point, because there is some degree of randomness to these
Okay.
things, and I've struggled with it a lot. So I think if I just jump in here, test and iterate your labels, sure. But the part that you're gonna like, Mark, is this
Hey,
fine
there we
tuning.
go. Okay.
Fine tuning is the secret sauce to this, right? Because this allows you to account for nuance, like what you just said. And basically, what we do, or what fine tuning is you'll have. I can actually show you if I test this pathway. and I'll do just calling back. And then I'll do sure, what's up? And now you can see, by the way, for those of you who don't use this is a super handy tool of test pathways where you can actually see where the agent is at. And now we're at the decision point, right? Where depending on what I'm going to say, it'll go down one of these three pathways. Now, what exactly did you say, Mark? It was
It's not a good
um,
time to talk. I need to think about it.
I love that. Now let's see what this says. Completely understand. Would it be all right if we schedule a time that works better for you to discuss this further? We can set up an appointment for any time Monday to Saturday. Now, in this case, the agent decided that, look, this seems like a more positive than negative comment, right? They haven't completely shut you out. Now let's pretend that you, as the person creating this, does not want this. You want it, in this case, you would have liked for it to go on the left hand side. How do you do that? It's kind of hard to prompt it that way because there's too many edge cases. What you do is that on the right hand side, and I think a lot of people don't use this as much as they should. This is a really powerful way to understand the back end of what's going on with your agent. But if you scroll down here, you can actually see that the last thing, this shows you the decision that Bland made at every step of the conversation. So in this case, it said that the decision was, I mean, the previous note was, are these still looking to sell? Yes. And the pathway that it chose was users thinking about it. What if I disagree? What if I want, this is what it was about. What if I disagree? What if I think, no, I don't think that's a valid thing.
Right.
I still think that they're not interested. You press that, press save. And now, and keep in mind, this can take 3 or 4 tries in the sense that like the more you fine tune it and the more you repeat the process, the stronger it will lean towards what you're fine tuning it for. So if we retest this, and I'll copy this, so I'll rewrite the whole thing. Test pathway, start, returning a call.
Got it. So this is kind of like chain of thought. It's kind of like showing you its decision pathway every single time it's doing an action.
Exactly. And now it doesn't usually work on the first time because it doesn't take that into consideration more than its original sort of chain of
Right.
thought,
Right.
right? But after the number I found is around 3 to 5. Now we won't have time. I won't bore you guys with actually doing that, but the after 3 to 5, it will sort of lean more towards the direction that you want to go. And it's actually really, really accurate at that point.
Awesome.
Okay. And I know we skipped over one of them, which is basically to test and iterate your labels. These two kind of go hand in hand, which is a big part of just of doing these things is just testing them out. So testing out different conversations. Now I know testing Bland can be quite a pain, especially if you're making phone calls all the time. Your best friend in these situations is this test pathway because you can see the exact decision that it made at each step of the conversation, and this cuts at least it cut down our testing time by probably for 80% or something.
Awesome. Awesome.
But that's kind of an overview of labels, right? It's a pretty straightforward concept, right? It's just where this is how you tell Bland to move on to different nodes in your view.
Yeah, awesome. And if you guys haven't checked out our last video, it's much more comprehensive about conversational pathways in general. For these next few videos, we want to avoid taking a whole hour. So this is going to be more of a succinct video. There's a few more coming on the way on other topics we want to discuss using Bland.
Thank you for having me on, Mark. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. And once again, thanks to Taha for all the Bland sauce. We're going to throw those links again in the description and let us know, like you did last time, what you liked and what you want to learn about moving forward, because that gives us a good roadmap for what to film next. So thanks again. We'll see you soon.